It is time for Streetwise with former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association Streetwise Productions, host of Streetwise, Mr. Lou Telano.
Good evening, and by the way, I want to introduce myself. This is Lou Telano. I hope you've heard of me, and I hope you recognize me through live stream or through streetwisepro.com. For the last 21 and a half years, I was and still am with WGBB 1240 AM right here on Long Island, the oldest Long Island radio talk show. And now it's an honor for me to be on Strong Island TV on a podcast. Actually, I'm talking to the Facebook people because you could watch me and see me now. It's my understanding I'll be on the YouTube sometime this evening or tonight or whatever. So hopefully you can catch me on YouTube as well. So, Jason, I think thank you for being. I guess you call you engineer or chief engineer or.
Hey, yes, thank you, Lou. It's a pleasure to have you. I am Jason Price. I am the production engineer here at Strong Island Radio and Television. I actually have a few questions before you get going with your show today.
Right.
The first question I have for you is, how did you get involved with TV and radio?
When I was a young fella, a police officer, I should say, in New York, my late partner and I were guests on a lot of radio and talk shows going way back. And I got hooked. And one of the TV shows, Midday Live, Bill Boggs, who's still around, he was the Johnny Carson of daytime television. Wow. So, as you know, there's always something going on. Son of Sam, some high-profile case throughout even the country or the city or the state. So he would invite me on as a co-host on Midday Live, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. But that's how I broke into television. Prior to that, as a guest on radio, again, because of my law enforcement background, prior to being a police officer, I was a New York City correctional officer. And then again, I would be a guest on shows like Long John Nebel, that was 10 in the evening to 6 in the morning. The late Bob Grant, a lot of people, he was the first combat, as they say, talk show host.
Okay.
Yeah, he would. He probably started all this stuff where, what you see now, where the host gets tough with the either guest or the or a political person or whomever. He was the guy, that sort of started that. The Barry Farber and Barry Gray were also two night talk show hosts early on. So I was fortunate enough to be on their shows and radio show. And again, it was like a drug. I got hooked on it. And then I was told, Lou, you have a good radio voice, which I didn't realize it, And I said, let me give it a shot. And here I am. And I was fortunate enough to, on Time Warner, QPTV, 1998, did a show, 2 high-profile cases, by the way, that were in the news, and I won the Time Warner Award. So, again, you give somebody an award, you can say, hey, wait a minute, I love this. I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to stick with it, So, and I've got to like it, and I enjoyed, because there's nothing, I think, more interesting than interviewing people, and
I would have to say that's what detectives have a very close connection with, interviewing.
Correct. Yeah, and you learn the technique. Dr. Frida Birnbaum, who was, she's a psychoanalyst, psychologist, psychiatrist. She was my guest several weeks ago, and she said, Lou, when did you become a psychologist? And I said, I guess when I was a correction officer. I don't know, So, and from there on. So, but like you said, Jason, you get to have a knack for dealing with people. Become a people person,
Yeah.
you know. And
So sociology really plays a big role
yeah,
in to interact with certain individuals and their characters.
you know, talking about individuals and characters, I've had the fortunate enough to interview a lot of the guests that you see on Mark Levin, Tucker, Hannity, Janine Pirro, Bill O'Reilly. They were my guests before they had them or even after. I just wanted to knock around a couple of names for the audience that were some of my guests. I'm still with WGBB, 1240 AM radio, folks, at Saturday at 4 p.m. I'm there every Saturday. And one of the people that I was interesting to interview was, I have so many, is Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Great lady, very passionate in what she does. Her and I did a 1 hour talking about this latest thing on this late term abortions, which
Yes.
she asked me what my thought was in regard to my background. I said, it's murder, it's homicide, you know, and because you're killing a living human being. And I've arrested people for that. Except now, because they're in the hospital environment and there's the doctor there and the mother's there, you kill your child, you get locked up.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was one, you know, it's just I don't know where we're going with this. What I'm saying, where this country is going, where the baby is alive. And then the doctor says to the mother, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? The baby's alive, case closed. And they terminate the baby. So her and I had a heavy-duty conversation with that. Another I had so many interesting guests. I was the only talk show host that was able to interview Sheriff Joe Arpaio for 1 hour.
Yeah.
America's toughest sheriff, as they
Yes.
call him.
The sheriff.
I did a 1 hour, and it could have been 2 hours. So, all right,
That's great. That's great. Real quick question,
Yeah.
though. So as you had mentioned earlier, you know, you were with the sheriff's department and you were a detective in your younger careers. Of course, before detective, you were a patrolman, man in blue. You know, to serve and uphold the law and to provide a service for the community. With that experience that you have, what other experience in the field of criminal justice have you put yourself into or involved with besides the police and the detective? I know that you have a big resume in the world of criminal justice.
Well, I was the law enforcement liaison for former Mayor Rudy Giuliani,
Yes.
and he is responsible at that time for the enhancement of quality of life in the city of New York. By the way, which is gone now.
Oh,
It's completely gone.
Self-sustainable in New York City?
I recently spoke to Rudy Giuliani, and I said, Rudy, come home. You know, and it's just so we went the complete opposite. But you know, Jason, you know what the sad part is? Mayor Bill de Blasio thinks he's doing a great job, and he believes it. You know.
Well, I mean, he thinks that he's doing a great job, but what's the city really becoming?
To see see where the city went. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the last 20 years, the city has gone through many different changes, and I've watched. You know, I mean,
Yes.
remember back in the old days when 42nd Street used to be nothing but the run of the muck, per se. You know, Giuliani, amazing job, did an amazing job. But now, with all these new trends coming in, you know, with people's view on life, it seems like just the city. I mean, that one case where a young teenager who was inspired to become a police officer, all right, 15 years old, gets literally a group of gangsters came in with machetes and just took his life, which I'm sure you've heard of. Situations like that, it's almost it almost kind of brings me back to like the 80s or late 70s, early 80s when the gangs were running the streets of New York City. And it seems like now it's more multicultural, and with the melting pot that New York has, it seems like this kind of violence is beginning to come back.
Well, you're referring to Junior, as they called him, in the Bronx, where he was macheted and murdered, and the bodega.
Yep.
And I was up there with a couple of my members, and we presented a check to his mom and dad up there. That was a terrible thing. Two reasons. They say he died, was murdered because of mistaken identity. I go a little further, Jason. He was a police explorer.
Right.
Living in the South Bronx, and he was so proud of the police cadet uniform that he was wearing that he would walk through the streets. You don't walk through the streets up in the South Bronx with the Latin Kings and MS-13, and with the police jacket, which he was proud of. His goal was to be a detective someday. And his life ended at 15 years old.
Very short.
And so this mistaken identity is crap. It's just that's my feeling, and when I spoke to his mom and dad, they agreed with me. But it's not out in the in the papers. Getting back, you mentioned 42nd Street, Times Square, and Rudy Giuliani.
Yep.
I was the chief of the sheriff's department at that time, and it's not the police department that closes up all these XXX places, which it's civil. It's the sheriff's department.
Right.
So we are the ones that closed up and locked up all the people that were running those porn places, pedophilia places. I keep going. There's stuff I couldn't even say what we had. But interesting happened with me and Rudy Giuliani. By the way, this is Lou Telano. I got to give myself a plug, and it's my pleasure to be having a conversation with Jason Price on Strong Island TV, and he's got me reminiscing. But Rudy Giuliani was standing with me on the corner as the chief of the sheriff's department, and a lot of those places got tipped off that they weren't going to get raided. Mm-hmm. However they do that, they do. Mm-hmm. So some of the places closed up, and you can't just kick in doors and break in doors unless you have a warrant.
Right. The court order has to order the sheriffs to enforce certain rules or laws that have to
Correct.
Follow.
So for 2 weeks, we were putting together warrants to hit all these places. So I'm standing on the corner, some store owner on 8th Avenue, and then there's a movie house there on 8th Avenue, 41st and 2nd, put an extra padlock on the door. Mm-hmm. So my captain says, "Hey, Chief, this serial number on the lock is not on the warrant." And I'm standing with Rudy Giuliani. He says, "What should we do?" I said, kick the effing door down. I didn't say effing, you know what I said. Mm-hmm. And Rudy says, "Oh, Lou, I could see you were city detectives," and he walked away. And, how many attorneys said, "Lou, that's illegal. You're supposed to abide by the warrant." I says, "Yeah. What happened? Did the store owner say that we came in and took his pedophile files? Did we take his porn? Did we take his drugs that we found in it? Is he going to do that?" He said, so I says, "I knew this would happen. He's not going to complain,"
right.
So we closed up all those places, like you had mentioned, Jason, earlier, and the city seems to be going back to that, I hate to say.
Yeah.
With the present city administration, it's gotten worse. And, and some of my guests, we talk about that, and I did talk about that 3 weeks ago with the former, and you know who he is. Most people know who he is, but you being in law enforcement yourself, know Bernie Kerrick, the former police commissioner.
Yep.
He was my guest 4 weeks ago, and we talked about the different change in the city of New York, and because he was the correction commissioner and police commissioner, aside from being a city detective,
Yep.
So we discussed that, and who else? I just want to talk about some of the interesting characters that, by the way, I'm going to bring to Strong Island.
Oh,
so,
amazing.
you know another character, Bruce Cutler.
Wow.
He was Bruce. By the way, folks,
Yeah.
Bruce Cutler was the attorney for John Gotti.
Wow.
You know,
Yep.
and you know we talked about another person that was my guest, Roger Stone.
Roger Stone. Yes.
Roger Stone was my guest twice. Roger Stone wrote 2 books. Actually, 2 books. He wrote several books, but 2 top books: The Bush Crime Family and something about Dirty Clintons,
The Dirty Clintons.
something like that.
Yep.
So while I'm interviewing him, Jason, on WGBB 1240 AM radio, we were talking about how the feds surrounded Roger Stone's home at 2:30 in the morning. Family man, 2:30 in the morning, with children in the house, with emergency service vehicles. He lived near a canal. They had a police boat. They had a little mini tank.
Wow.
Would you believe this? And we talked about, and he did, by the way, on my show, which maybe someday I'll bring a tape in, because he says, Lou, I'd like to have this on record. I exposed the Clintons and I exposed the Bushes family, which ties in to Obama. Yes. And he said, I just want you to know, because I also said this on Hannity, I am not suicidal. I love myself. I'm very vain. He said, and I want this, you keep an archive. I said, I'll definitely keep this. And he said, so 2 things are going to happen to me. He said, again, they're so slick. He didn't say who he was referring to, is that it's going to come out like suicide. He said, so what's their other choice? They're going to lock me up. And they locked him up.
And they took him away.
And they locked him up. But you know what Bruce Cutler and I were talking about? Bruce says, this is the biggest farce and joke in the world because the feds call me, Mr. Cutler, can we call you Bruce? Of course you can call me Bruce. Can you bring in Mr. Gotti tomorrow at your convenience in the afternoons? Of course I will.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, and he walks him in. But Roger Stone, they raid his home. John Gotti gets an arrest, which you heard, arrest by appointment.
Yeah. Mr. Gotti, why don't you just come on over? You know, come on in. We're not gonna get you, but with Bruce,
Walk right in.
middle of the night, no knock warrant.
No knock warrant. They take poor Roger Stone out in his pajamas, no shoes,
Kids are
handcuffed behind his back. John Gotti walks in with his $5,000 suit, his $500 tie, and well, have a seat, Mr. Gotti. You know, and this is.
We all know that John Gotti, the Gotti's got to show up in style and with fashion. You know, they have to come and make a statement.
Yeah, that was Teflon Don, as they call him. So Bruce Cutler was a interesting person, and again, I will have some of them right here at Strong Island. I got to give. I want to mention will be my first guest next Saturday. Burgess Owens. He's a former Super Bowl champion, NFL, and he played for the New York Jets. Besides the Oakland Raiders, and he has a book. He has several books. Liberalism is one. Why I Stand for the Flag, and All About Team. You know, and All About Team is how America should work together. We should work as a team, which we're not doing now.
Nope.
At all. No. You know, and he talks about that. Recently, Burgess Owens was, I guess, interrogated, or questioned by Congress in regard to reparations. And he's totally against reparations. He said, it's embarrassing. He says, this demeans us. He said, but him and I, he was a guest of mine also a couple of years ago. But we did talk about that because it's not the first time reparations was brought up by politicians, but you and I know it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, because it's all about getting votes,
That's what it is. That's what politicians strive for.
right? And because we talked about, which I have on Twitter, and speaking of Twitter, I'm going to brag a little bit. I'm on Twitter a year and a half, and I have, as of today, July 4th, I reached 10,000 followers. As of this morning, I got 10,004 in a year and a half. I guess people like my insanity, you know, or because what I do is, obviously I can't compare myself with Donald Trump, but I do say, a lot of people will love to say, but they don't have it, you know, for whatever reason. I guess some people are actually afraid to say what they think. We're afraid to say we love America. We're afraid to pledge the allegiance. Where some people are afraid to put American flag outside their door.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't Well, I do know where we're going because Donald Trump has to be reelected, and I predict a landslide.
Yeah.
I do.
I strongly believe that he will serve a second term in office.
Yes.
You know, and since we're talking about Donald Trump, which I know you've had a lot of interaction with our current president, and that's actually something I want to get into, and I want to talk more about politics with you. But before I get to politics, what I would like to do is, if the listeners would like to call into our show Streetwise here, you may do so. The phone number to reach out is 516-945-9099. So if you would like to call in and ask some questions for Lou Telano, who is the former New York City Sheriff's Chief and whatnot. But so Lou, let's talk about you and your involvement with politics. Like we were mentioning, you were saying with Donald Trump, you know, you have a lot. You have a couple of organizations that you were the chair, the president of, or that you
Right.
have, and I would like to get to know a little bit more about that.
Okay. I was always involved, even as the expression is on the job, with fraternal police organizations and politics. 1982, I got a call from someone who I knew from politics, Mario Cuomo, right? And he said, Lou, he said, I'm campaigning with Michael Dukakis, who was running against my favorite guy, Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, yes.
Right? And he said, we need someone who has law enforcement background, who at that time, my late partner and I, known as the Lone Ranger Tanta, we were in the newspapers quite often to offset the liberalism of Michael Dukakis. So can we come to your home? And they did come to my home. And it was throughout the news media. If you can see this photo, folks, I only was able to bring one in. It's I'm going to hang it up. It's my living room, and that's Michael Dukakis, his wife, my son Lou Jr., and on the right here is JFK Jr., who was in my home with Mario Cuomo in my living room, and my late wife is here, and as you could see, my white hair on the side, and one of my nieces. But there's a whole bunch of things. Anyway, so to help Michael Dukakis in his campaign. So, but I was the chief of the Seagate Police Department at that time, and but anyway, long story short, Andy Cuomo, who was his campaign manager, who's who's our governor now, said, Lou, can you do me a favor? He said, Andy Cuomo. He said, do you have literature out there regard? I says, I do. He says, first, but I jumped the gun a little bit. Mario Cuomo asked me to run for the New York State Senate, and I did. And I lost. But because I ran as, believe it or not, folks, you're not going to believe this, I was a Democrat. I was a Democrat at the time. And so anyway, so I ran as a Democrat. out in Long Island, and I ran against friends of mine who were Republicans, and they're still my friends. But anyway, but this is what Andy Cuomo asked me to do, and here's some of the literature. There's two different types. One says Cuomo and Telano, the winning team. There was two different types. It just shows the organizations that endorse me. That's why there's two separate ones. But anyway, Andy Cuomo asked me to do this for him. And him and I bucked heads not too long ago in regard to this liberal crap, you know? So that's why I said past tense. I was a Democrat. You got me into politics, Jason. I did. I'm going to, and this is like, I call a nostalgia question because it seems like everybody knows who Anthony Weiner is, you know? So the nostalgia question is, audience, call in if you know who it is. It's 516-945-9090. But I'm going to tell you whether you call or not. It was yours truly, Lou Telano.
Lou Telano.
I ran against Anthony Weiner in 1998. You know, and I say to the people, I told you so, you know. But, you know, interesting enough, Jason, the guy had issues, and he was a sick guy, Anthony Weiner. No two ways about it. But he would have been, believe it or not, a better mayor than Bill de Blasio if he didn't have this illness, sickness going on in him, because he did know the city backwards.
He did. He
did.
He knew the ins, he knew the outs, he knew it all.
Correct. He was a city councilman, and we had scheduled 5 debates, him and I. He never showed up once. So, but what people get confused, how I ran against him is I ran in a Democratic primary against assemblymen, senators, New York State Senate assemblymen, and I was the only one without a political title, except I was the chief of the Seagate Police Department. And so I jumped into a Democratic primary against, and I'm going to say this, out of the 5 or 6, my name ends with a vowel. So I get the endorsement of the Jewish Post, the Jewish Press, and the Daily Forward, 3 top Yiddish newspapers.
L'chaim.
L'chaim, Mazel Tov. Yeah, and they endorsed me.
Wow.
Now, and it was just amazing. So they got scared, the other candidates. They said, holy cow, there's 5 Jewish political people I'm running against, right? My name ends with a vowel. So they knew they would split the Jewish vote, and I got the Hasidims endorse me. Oh, we have a call.
Hello, thank you for calling in to Streetwise with Lou Telano. May I ask who's calling?
Yeah, Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, Rick. How are you? This is Lou Telano.
Good. Lou,
Yeah.
I wanted to get your feeling about 2 things. Your feeling about Mayor de Blasio not being in New York at the time of the blackout and running for president, and also your feeling, because it goes back to Mayor de Blasio, on the NYPD not being able to use stop and frisk as they used to many, many moons ago. I'd like to get your feeling on that, please.
Well, obviously he's running for president, and he's got to spend a lot of time outside of the city. But he is the mayor of the city of New York, and it was a blackout. And fortunately, it didn't last that long. My thoughts are is probably yours. As the mayor, he has to be in New York. He could still campaign running for president from the city of New York. I mean, we got social media today. You know, you do Skype today. You do so many different things today. To answer that question, yes, he should have been in the city of New York, but politics came first. The other question about stop and frisk.
Yes.
Rick is talking about stop, question, and frisk. this is the reason why we're having so many shootings now, increasing in the city of New York, because the police officers, not like in my time, you could search somebody on reasonable cause, probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and a cop knows his job. Nobody tells a plumber. You have a plumber come in your home and he has to fix something. You don't stand over and tell him where to put a pipe. You do the same thing with a carpenter. You don't go under the hood with your mechanic and tell him, how to tune up your car. But yet when it comes to a police officer, everybody knows the police officer's job. So the cop knows who has a gun. He knows who's carrying a gun. Just by the body language. And also, you know people from previous interactions with them. So this is what's happening now. The cops today, I don't know how anyone would want to be a city cop today. If you're there and you're trapped, you can't get away. It's another story. With the cameras, with the business cards that they have today, someone has a gun and you cannot search them. That's why we're catching up with Chicago, by the way, Rick. And if we have to bring stop and frisk back, it's not a racial issue like de Blasio tried to say. Only African Americans or people of color are being stopped. 1,000 young black people were shot in the last year and a half in Chicago. They were all African Americans. Black Lives Matter? Not in Chicago, So anyway, Rick, we have to bring back stop and frisk. Sadly, it's not going to happen in the near future. I doubt it. There was only one Rudy Giuliani, and I do have to give former Mayor Bloomberg credit because when he brought Ray Kelly back, the former police commissioner, he said, "You're the police commissioner. You're the expert. You do what you have to do that you think is necessary, for the equality of life and the safety of the people in New York." De Blasio runs the police department today, so we're in deep stuff. I'm sorry, Rick. I don't see this happening in the near future with police not able, with the stop and frisk, which you alluded to.
Right, and I've read about you in the past. And a lot of people may not know about the Lone Ranger and Tonto and Starsky and Hutch. And I think it was an interesting thing how you became the Lone Ranger and Tonto and how the show Starsky and Hutch was modeled after you and your late partner. Wow. And it would be something interesting for some of the people to know that you were not just a cop, but you did some exceptional things with disguises. Before that was in, you were one of the leaders of the disguises because I followed up on a few things that you did over the years, which was very, very impressive because that led the NYPD and other law enforcement to start copying you getting dressed up as a rabbi, as a priest, as a woman, and all different things. Even today a woman wouldn't be a big deal. They'd probably like it.
Were you talking to Jason here? Because thanks for calling. We're going to cut you off because there's other people trying to come in. I'll answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that because...
I'll listen to it. Good luck with everything.
Thanks for your call. Interesting call because...
You're welcome.
Rick, is that was his name? Rick? Yeah. Rick, I guess it sounds like we rehearsed this. But anyway, John and I, my late partner, were in night court one year in Brooklyn night court, and we're standing in the back of the courthouse in the evening, and I had ponytail, I had my hair down to my back, I wore a leather headband, but that was hip then, because that's what the 60s were. You wore a leather headband. Not thinking of Tonto, the Indian, I just wore that, and I had an earring on, which was one of the first to wear an earring, and John was standing out, and he kept his hat on his head in court, standing in the back, and he wore sunglasses. So the guy we locked up, actually for selling drugs, is on the stand, and this rarely happens, where the legal aid attorney requests a hearing at an arraignment in night court. So the last thing we wanted people to know that we were cops,
Right.
especially all the perpetrators sitting in the audience. And by the way, a lot of the cops that were sitting there didn't even know we were cops. We didn't have our shields displayed. And he points in the back, and he says, "Those guys back there were Tonto and his partner." And the Daily News was in night court covering some high-profile case. They forgot about the case, and they grabbed us.
Wow.
And they wrote a story on us, and the old cliche in history.
Lessons written in.
Yeah, from that story on, it took off, and I don't know. I might have it here. So that took off, and the newspapers and even fellow police officers would start calling us the Lone Ranger in Tonto, and I got a shot here where you can see. This is actually before we got promoted to detective. I have a picture here where you can see where I look like Tonto, Jay Silverheels, and that's my partner. You can see we got silver shields on, as they say, and we did look like it. And there's another close shot where we're in plain clothes, and
There you go. You got the starburst shield.
yeah. So it shows what we look like. And anyway, the New York Times did a feature story on us about new Lone Ranger in Tonto, and 20th Century Fox saw the story, and they actually called us, and we thought it was somebody playing a joke. It is 20th Century Fox. Anyway, so we met with them in New York at 20th Century Fox office on Fifth Avenue, and that's what happened. And but what they did with Starsky and Hutch, again, you could Google it, folks. Couldn't Google it then, but they changed our names. They gave us 2 Polish names and put us in another state. And so we filed it. When we saw the first movie come out promoting Starsky and Hutch, we saw it was us. We saw it was us. And so we put an injunction on it, and we had a theatrical attorney who if some of you people remember Hawaii Five-0, which was a nice cop movie, and the chief of police there was acted by the name of Jack Lord. His brother was Thomas Ryan, who was a theatrical attorney. He read about our story, and that we are saying that the Starsky and Hutch is us. He represented us, and they offered us a settlement, and we took it. And we took it because he said, look, you don't know where this show is going to go, so take the money and run. It was not a bad offer at that time.
Right.
And we took it not knowing it's going to turn into $1 million or whatever, $1 billion TV show, and it did. So
Big production, yeah.
yeah, so that's how, Rick, if you're still listening, pretty much how Starsky and Hutch was born. It was born as a result of the Lone Ranger in Tonto. And here we are. So, and that's pretty, and, oh, by the way, there was a book written on us too after that, and I have the cover of the book. And while I'm talking, I can see, I think there's another caller. This is the cover of the book, which is called Cop Team. And
Hi, thank you for calling into Streetwise with Lou Telano. Please state your name and go ahead and ask Lou a question.
yeah, hi, this is Lou Telano.
Lou, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Hey, it's Coach.
Oh, Coach Ray, the boxing
Ray.
coach. The boxing coach, Ray, of course. Everyone knows you.
I wanted to wish you well. We're watching here at the center now. I'm training
beautiful.
your shorties. I just want to wish you well and also thank you for all of the help you've given this program for the last 15 years. The NYVPA supports our youth program here. And I wish I could get down there to the studio to wish you well, but we're watching and listening live here on your new home. And it's coming in loud and clear. It's a beautiful picture.
Oh, thanks. That, by the way, that's Ray Bettinelli does a great job for young kids.
Yeah, hold on. Let's have these shorties say hello. Hey, say hello to Coach.
Oh, my God.
I mean, Chief.
Hey.
We got them doing their workout.
Oh, yeah, get them working out. Get them,
Yeah, we got them, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we got them 6 to 7 here, keeping them off the streets, keeping them tough.
Well, you do. The audience should know who you are, BCA Boxing.
BCBA, we're doing this 15
BCBA,
years,
doing it for
15 years I met you, right? You walked up to the first center?
That's, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what Ray does? Ray, people come in and they actually want to get their kids off the street. And Ray might get paid the first month, and after that, what's he going to do? He keeps them there. And he's been doing that for so many years. He just is so helpful. We're fortunate. So the New York Veteran Police, my organization, we support what he does.
Every month. It's a big help, Lou.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's a grind down here. We're all volunteers. We do this just out of a passion of doing our part. But, guys like yourself, your organization, we get a lot of help from some of the other businesses in the area. But, man, doing it 15 years with BCBA, and ironically, about 25 years, almost the same amount of time you were broadcasting over at the other station.
Yes.
So that's weird.
Wow.
But I want to free your phone up. I want you, I tell you, it's a great little station over there, Bobby and Jason. Those are great guys. I'm so glad you're part of a brand new family there. They're a good studio, pictures beautiful, audio's beautiful, and I think you're going to do real well over there.
By the way, thanks for the introduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay. I'll see you. We'll go out for a cup of coffee soon.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
All right, have a great show.
Thank you, Ray Bettinelli. Thank you for calling in. It's always good to hear from someone like him, and he called the show. So he did throw me back a moment. I just want to, I have to show my partner. And, speaking of my career, this is I'm proud of this. This is John Lindsay, the mayor of the city of New York. And, in the 70s, a lot of white and black teams were murdered, cop teams. There were 2 a year, and it was close. My late partner and I were hooked up with a black team. Well, I could say black team because you were 2 black cops and 2 white cops working together, and we usually divide. Anyway, we did make a raid, and it resulted in Warren Forward. That's his name, African American police officer. He was shot. The guy that shot him, folks, was holding a baby, 18-month-old baby, in one hand, and he had a gun in the other hand. This is what cops do. And so I can't shoot the guy. I can't shoot him because he's holding an 18-month-old baby. And I got to tell you this. You know what cops told me? He should have shot. So it's going to shoot through the baby and kill him. So in other words, this guy's going to, and there were 4 cops. There were my partner and his partner, another black plainclothes police officer. We were working plainclothes before we were detectives. The guy would have killed all of us. And this is, it's easy. How do I say this? A lot of cops would have done it. They would have shot him and the baby because you had to. Otherwise, he would have killed 4 cops. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to grab him and not hurt the baby and do whatever we had to do. So we made that arrest, and Warren Farr and myself are getting the Medal of Honor on the steps of City Hall by Mayor John Lindsay. You could see Warren standing next to me. My late partner and his partner got the Combat Cross because we were involved in the shooting. They came in. Well, by the way, they had 2 other guys in the other room. We divided, went into 2 separate rooms. And when the guy took the baby out of the crib, when we got into the apartment, that's where he had the gun. He had the gun in the crib. So he took the baby and the gun in one hand, and then he started shooting at us. So, but sad part is, Warren, if he was shot today, they could have saved his life. He did die several years later of blood poisoning from the bullet that got into his system. So anyway, that's yeah, just reminiscing with poor Warren Forward who got shot, and what can I tell you? And but later on, that's Warren and I getting the Medal of Honor at the steps of City Hall, and this my late partner and I getting combat course at some other shooting by Mayor A. Beam, again at the steps of City Hall. We were detectives at the time, so so we've been out there, and our names are out there. And again, it happened by accident, just being in night court. And my partner, who got mad at me, he took the night off one night, and me and a couple other guys made a great arrest. And guess what the headline of the New York Post is? He says, Lou, you did it intentionally. New York Post, Tonto gets his man. Headlines of the New York Post, Tonto gets his man. Okay. So, as they say, it happens. And it's another photo of me and John when we were in our day, back in the good old days. And there's another photo here that I did have. I showed it before. My late partner and I were in drag, on duty, not off duty, folks. So which you can do today.
Yes.
This is a shot. I'm on the right with a wig, female clothing, and my partner's on the right. We're standing at the urinal in the police precinct. So, and we're dressed in drag, and we're standing up in front of the urinal. This, by the way, this is when the book was written about me and my late partner, John Seppi. That's the cover that we wanted of the book, which became Cop Team. But they said, oh, you can't do that. No. You can't show you guys wearing drag in front of the urinal. Now we could do it naked. So we're just, times have changed, So, Jason, I think you want to.
I wanted to discuss. We do have a little time left in our show, a few more moments. So if anybody out there is wanting to call on in and call up Lou Telano on Streetwise, you can do so at 516-945-9099. Call in and ask any questions you have for Lou. And Lou, I do believe next week. I know we mentioned it a little bit earlier today, but you were touching base about next week's guest.
Next week's guest, I was going to bring it up again, Jason. It's Burgess Owens. He's a former Super Bowl champion from the NFL. Mm-hmm. Played safety, 10 years. It's a lot of years in football, folks.
That's a lot of head trauma.
Yeah, and playing safety, and he played with the Jets, and he'll be my guest. We're going to try to Skype him next week if we can, So and we'll do that because he'll be in California, I think. So
we'll have him Skype in, and we'll ask him if we could do a video Skype, so we might be able to bring him up on screen too, which could be a good.
Yeah. And I'm gonna bring back some folks. You got to come back to watch me on podcasts. Of course, I'm gonna have a lot of these interesting people back, that I've had before that can't wait to come in and at the studio here. Mm-hmm. I'm honored to be here. Jason. By the way, what a great professional place this is.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
And it's also it's warm.
Yes.
You feel very comfortable here. So the way radio and TV should be. Mm-hmm. So
Relax.
I've again I'm 21 and a half years at WGBB. You'll still catch me on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in 12:40 a.m. And again with I know Streetwise Pro it's going to bring me here also. By the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to work now, but we'll figure it out. I'll be on both, and great. My first night here.
Yes.
I mean, it's just you know.
I feel as though we had a successful first show, our first episode. If there's one thing, Lou, that if the listeners can leave today, if there's one thing you can tell them with today's society and the way things are changing, if you can leave a little bit of advice for the listeners, with
what's going on and
there's just a good quote to leave the show today. Like a good.
Well, it's there's so many quotes, but I just have to say this, folks. Get politically involved. I would never. They say years ago, don't talk about politics and religion, but today you have to talk about politics. I hate to say that because the country's going in the wrong direction. We got to put good people in office, and just it sounds like another call is coming in.
Yes, we have another call coming in. Caller, thank you for calling in to the Lou Telano Streetwise. Please state your name and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Rob, and I have a question about today's front page of the New York Post, calling for de Blasio to resign, and I read the article, and they want Como to remove him out of office for 30 days while I guess they do the legal work to remove him, and I just wanted Lou's thoughts on that, and I'm going to hang up and listen for his response.
All right.
I'm watching online.
I may surprise you. We should remove the both of them from office. Andy Cuomo, and somehow it's not going to happen. But it's not going to happen. We may like to see de Blasio win. It's going to be city council has to get involved somehow, and then it's Senate and the Assembly. It's a
process.
It's going to be tough, and they'll use all kinds of different reasons. But it's wishful thinking. It sounds like the guest was looking to happen, but the answer to that short answer is it's not going to happen. You just have to vote them out next time, people. But again, New York City is so liberal now. It's going to be tough. We're not going to see Rudy Giuliani or even the Bloomberg. Back again. In the city of New York. So, I'm gonna just show this quickly. It's I think got a couple more minutes left. It's just the old TV guide. It shows you a show called I think the Rookies. And John and I were fortunate enough to be in somewhere in there talking about us on one of the talk shows. If I had to leave people again, like you said, Jason, with get political. It's an old cliche, but please go out there and vote. And vote for the right reason. We just. My question is, what irks me is, last week you had the former chief of the Border Patrol, over 30 years with law enforcement background, being interviewed and questioned and scrutinized by someone who was a former bartender. How did this happen? I as a former chief myself, I would say, hey, sister, take a walk. She's not an attorney. She has no law enforcement background. I don't know how the heck they allowed her. I guess she can as a congressperson because she elected to Congress. She's interrogating and interviewing. She was doing that prior to that with attorneys who were attorneys before she was born. This is where we got to get rid of these people, vote them out. That's my advice to you. We're heading towards socialism right here, and socialism doesn't work. It never has worked, and it will never work. You're going to get promised everything and anything. They'll do anything for your vote because they're a bunch of, starts with a W, all of them. They sell their soul, just to con you. And it's sad because people do get conned. Okay, I want to thank you, folks. This is Lou Telano. I want to thank you for listening or watching Streetwise. on Strong Island TV. I'll see you next week, and thanks for listening and watching Streetwise. This is Lou Telano, and I'll catch you later.